A man that needs no introduction, but an introduction coming nonetheless from Coach Ron McKeefery, now at California State University, Fresno. I'm thankful to call him a mentor of mine. He's really been a man who has helped me in the field as I progressed from being a young coach at a very young age in 2015, interning at Eastern Michigan. Super happy to have him on, and I can't wait to get into this talk because I know he's going to have not just information about CSU Fresno, but and their program, but in particular about how to develop in this field as well. So this should be a great 15 to 20-minute conversation. So Coach Mac, please go ahead, introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about maybe your journey and those developmental opportunities that you've had along the way.
Yeah, Stu, what an honor to be on this, and I'm just so super proud of what you're doing in the field and with my momentum and everything. It speaks volumes about you as an individual. But also just makes us so proud in having just a small part of your journey and being a part of that. But yeah, my name's Ron McKeefery. I've been a strength coach for since for 20 plus years now, and I've run the gamut through several different institutions and organizations. I got my start with the Kansas City Royals as an intern. I had a great mentor there, Tim Maxey. That is up and runs a lot of things with Major League Baseball now, and then went to an internship with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So two, pivotal experiences early in my career that helped shape what I ended up doing as a mentor with our intern program. I felt so obligated to have that experience for people, an experience that I had. Felt obligated to do that, and so. From there, I bounced around. I ended up becoming a head strength coach at 22 years old in the NFL with NFL Europe, and pretty much been a head strength coach ever since. I had 10 years at South Florida, University of Tennessee. I did a small stint with Army Special Forces. Worked for the Cincinnati Bengals in the NFL, Eastern Michigan. Worked and traveled the world. Working for Play and being the director of performance and education for them, and working with different teams all around the world, including the 28 of the Chinese Olympic teams. And then now I'm here at Fresno State coaching with a couple of good buddies of mine, and just having a great time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One thing that I remember very early on listening to the earlier versions of the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast was your expression of technician, manager, and entrepreneur, which is obviously in your book as well. And so for me, putting this resource out there for these young and aspiring coaches, again, just like you said, is feeling obligated to give back and hopefully give a bit of a leg up to these young professionals coming through. So yeah, just want to say thank you for directing me in that direction to think about how we can always continuously give back. But it seems like from the experiences you've had, obviously you talked about how you're involved with Major League Baseball, NFL Europe, collegiate football, over to the Chinese Olympic Committee, a variety, and play as well, a variety of different experiences along the way. And I always find it interesting to hear about how did those things come up and what were the reasons behind taking on that role or seeking out those roles, because things happen for a reason. I think at the time it may not be clear, but when we reflect a couple of years into the future, we kind of understand that was a good decision, and it has led to many, many more opportunities on the way. And so for these young coaches who are coming through these various internship programs across the country, we obviously want to integrate them into the programs as best as possible so we can make impactful and astute professionals, and not just those that can only regurgitate the program of the university or the institution they've been at. So in terms of the intern coaches that are currently coming through Fresno State, how are they integrated within your program specifically? What is the typical responsibilities that a young professional might have under your tutelage?
Yeah, I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned there, because I think it's super important for young professionals to know this going into this field, because it is a very competitive, tight niche field. And every step along my journey and your journey, there was always an alternative path. There was always another direction that I could have gone. There was often always a safer choice. And I think right now, collectively, and I think this is every generation, so I don't want to sound like one of these old strength coaches that, back in my day type thing, but I think every generation's faced this. But there is this fear of making mistakes, and not wanting to put themselves out there too far. And I think if you have a kind of a clear picture of what you want to become, you can find the good and the bad in every situation that you go. And that's the attitude that you need to take right now. You need to find that you need to be taking opportunities with finding the good in that and learning from the bad, and creating this mental Rolodex of things that you want to do once you get your opportunity to run your program. And so whenever I was taking the next step in my journey, I always wanted to take calculated risk. I wanted to be able, if it was a job that I knew would help me get to the goal for me, which the goal for me for most of my career was getting to be in the NFL. And so, everything took that. So, even when I came back from NFL Europe, here I was in the NFL, I didn't have, the job wasn't coming right my way. I took a job with South Florida, which, typically you would associate Florida with speed, right? So I knew I could kind of hinge that in my career, or the fact that it was a small startup program that it was all primed to have success. Like there was a good, the writing was on the wall that this program could take off. And so I took that risk and it paid off, and I was there for 10 years and, became strength coach of the year during that time at a school that nobody even knew what the logo was at one point, So I think it's important that you take risk and you don't have a fear of mistakes in your journey early on. But to answer your question, I apologize for the diatribe there, but to answer your question, we integrate, as we throw our interns right in. And our I think that was something early on that I was forced to do in my career. Was Kansas City Royals, they hired me the next day. I was in front of multi-million-dollar athletes and having to coach without somebody there. And I was forced to grow up as a coach really, really quick. We don't throw you quite into the deep water that way, but we bring you in for a week on the front end before anybody gets here. And for a week, you go through University of McKeefery, and you go through every workout. You learn, you go through it at the same pace that they do. We go through, teaching you exactly why we're doing what we do, so you have a good understanding of what the program is. And then you coach each other. You take turns coaching each other through the program, so that you've gone through it physically. You coach somebody else through it before you ever touch one of the athletes. And then from the athlete perspective, our interns have a rack, and then our full-time staff manages between 2 and 3 racks. And so, you're documenting, you're keeping the pace, you're making sure that they're lifting with good technique, but you have that senior coach there to answer those, those questions like, my shoulders hurt, what should I do? Or he wants to go up, what should I do? And those types of things. So you're really in an environment where, you can't not get better, just like our athletes, by having your eyes right on top of them. They're benefiting from you being there, monitoring every set of every rep, every rep of every set. So it becomes this really cool environment, as where it gets kind of competitive amongst the groups. It gets even competitive amongst the interns. And you got this kind of constant camaraderie that exists between the athlete and the coach, and the coaches and the coaches, which is really, really fun.
Yeah, excellent points. I love the points about calculated risks. Obviously, this summer with the seminar that you're involved in, you talked about the calculated risks and being able to take that step across the line in the sand towards fear, but not so far as failure, in that you provide, just like you said, in your coach development program, you provide a space in which you're going to be uncomfortable often on a daily basis, but there is that mentorship around you from your full-time staff and yourself to be able to be successful. Not that there won't be failure, because as we both know, that's the greatest teacher. But absolutely, my time with you at Eastern Michigan, that was one of the most rewarding experiences and the most difficult experiences. The first couple of weeks being in there, going through McKeefery University, and then really getting stuck in, and as you say, kind of trial by fire. Here you go. This is your rack. You better add value to the individuals in front of you. So yeah, an excellent learning experience. Obviously, with developing these young coaches, I was privileged enough to go through your strength coach basic training, that kind of module you had back in 2015. I'm sure along the way there's been developments, whether it's been thoughts that have come from your own head, whether it's been talking with people at conferences about their own internship programs. Obviously, the progress of techniques in the weight room, the progress of technology coming into the weight room demands that the skill sets that we as sports performance professionals have improves or diversifies. So in terms of your kind of coach education program, could you just allude to maybe a couple of the things that have stood the test of time? Like these are big rock items that you need to have as a coach versus those that maybe have changed a little bit over time and now you think are becoming more and more important.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying what I think was a mistake that I made that I think a lot of people are still making in their internship programs. And that's trying to teach you everything that I know in 6 weeks. I think, I used to come with the 3-inch binder with every journal article that I've ever read, every article that I thought was good, every philosophy that I thought was important to learn. And I tried to shove that down on top of you while also teaching you my interpretation of that, which was my program, right? And so what I've done is I've scaled that way back to where you're going to understand completely the ins and outs of the winter program or the summer program or the in-season program of what we do and why we do it. Because we feel like if you know that like the back of your hand, then you're going to bring value to the next place that you go, because they're probably going to ask you about that experience and you're going to be able to really shine in that environment. We supplement that with a lot of professional skill sets that are not that are uncommon for a lot of places. Now, I think most people are doing it because I've spoken about this and I've obviously written a book about this, right? But the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur, I think to be a success in strength and conditioning, you have to be all three of those things. And most coaches, when they're young and when they're the age of most interns, all they think about, all they do is about talking about sets, reps, and exercises, right? But the job is so much more than that, right? So you got to know that. You got to be great. You got to understand all the philosophies. You got to understand the progressions, regressions. You got to know that thing, all that stuff. But you have to also manage time, people, and resources, and people being the hardest part. And we didn't learn that in biomechanics or kinesiology or whatever. And then especially when you become a leader of a department, right? Managing down and up becomes a difficult process as well. And that's where a lot of coaches fail. That's really what separates a successful collegiate or professional strength coach from kind of a performance coach, is that you have to be leading up and down and managing all these really high performing type A type personalities in a competitive environment. It's super uncommon. That's why if you're a strength coach at those levels and you have success, you can pretty much do anything. It's why I called my book CEO Strength Coach, because you are essentially developing the skills that a CEO of a company has to have. And then you have to be an entrepreneur. I've been in this field for 20 plus years, so I couldn't just rest on my laurels of, okay, I've been I was a head strength coach at 22 years old. I can't just do the same program that I did at 22 years old. I've had to grow with the different, with the trends and with the different equipment and with, now with technology becoming so prevalent, and that's something that even since you've been in my program, it's become, a mainstay in a lot of ways. And so I have to be forward thinking and constantly sharpening the sword and challenging my ideals, even though I know what I do works sometimes. Even I know that, doing this program, if I just carbon copy it, I know it's going to show results. I still have to go back to the drawing board each time and include our staff and get input from, there's so many things that are in our program that former interns have had their thumbprint on, that we still do. And it's like, I'll take the best idea wins. I don't care where the idea comes from, so it's a pretty cool environment where we include those things and we try to promote that. We do all the same things that everybody else does, right? We have the weekly meeting, we have all the modules that you go through. You go through and you build your strength and conditioning resume, which is something that I've talked about a long time ago. But we substitute it with a lot of, just interaction and lots of teaching moments that are in the creases.
Love it. I love that phrase, teaching moments in the creases, and like, yeah, reading between the lines. And just like you said about one of the things that either frustrates a lot of coaches in the field or on the flip side of the coin fascinates them is being able to influence the room and influence the person in front of you. And sometimes I was speaking with a coach recently about this. I can't remember who it was, but it doesn't mean you have to be the person who's beating their chest in the room or the person who's getting on top of every single individual. You could have the quietest word spoken at the right time that changes the trajectory of that individual's 4-year or 5-year collegiate career.
Absolutely.
Or having, you spoke about it this summer as well, about having a shared experience that may have been a traumatic experience that pulls two people close together. Exactly. And develops that trust. Yeah, that's one of the things about collegiate strength conditioning that I love. Is having these new personalities arrive every single year that you then continue to develop your kind of cultural and communication chameleon, as it were, to be able to talk with these people at their level. Yeah, it's awesome. That's
it's one of the reasons why, the rack, that's why you like you mentioned, like you own your rack, right? And you remember that. You could probably remember the guys that were at your rack.
Absolutely.
And that ownership of that was really big. And what you don't even know is that there's a lot of things that go into the background of choosing what intern's going to be at what rack, so they can kind of match some personalities, both from what's going to make the intern grow, but also from the athletes benefiting from that person and being able to respond to that person. And so you talk about kind of a nurturing environment. That's something that there's a lot of you're playing chess all day long with kind of making sure, but you're put into a position to have success as long as you rise to the challenge.
Absolutely. And Coach Matt, you've had some successful intern coaches who've developed under your wing and have since moved on around the country and around the world. So I wonder if perhaps you could point to maybe one or two former intern coaches who you had on your staff from previous walks of life who have really gone on to make a mark on the profession, and maybe also reach back to the time that they were with you and what they were like during that time and why you think that potentially set them up for a successful step forward.
Yeah, this might be the hardest question that you asked me, Stu, because we've had so many people go on. I mean, it's probably just a testament to me being old, right? But I think I've been very fortunate. Obviously you, with all the work that you're doing, is phenomenal. And I mean, I dote on you all the time to people. I think people that come to mind, Dana Cavalier and Napoleon Pichardo were my very first two interns that I ever had. And they were both sophomores at South Florida when I took over the position. And, they're the ones that went through all the learning experiences that I had to learn to run a successful intern program, because they were there for, sophomore, junior, senior year, and then even after that. But, both of them had a passion for baseball. Dana was from New York, and his dream job was the New York Yankees. That was his dream job. This is a sophomore in Tampa, Florida, that wasn't playing college baseball. Right. That was his dream job. So you can imagine how unattainable that might seem to somebody in that situation. And instead, what I did is I was like, all right, my job isn't so much just to try to teach them everything I know in this short amount of time. Right. My job is to continue to support them throughout their career. And that's what I tell on the very first day with our interns, is that the value of this internship isn't in the 6 weeks. The value of this internship is to have me in your corner for the rest of my career. Right. And I continually did that. So with Dana, as a good example, I constantly tried to put him in ways to have success. So I connected him to different baseball strength coaches that I knew that, from my time in baseball. I ended up working out a spring training deal with the Yankees, where he was able to go work with them for, the off seasons. And sure enough, through the time, he developed the relationships that he needed to have to go and become the head strength coach for the New York Yankees and go on to win, I think, 2 World Series rings with the New York Yankees. And Napoleon, the other one, it was the AAA coordinator for the Texas Rangers, and went on to mentor many, many coaches in the field. And you talk about those guys, you talk about Lou Corella with Georgia Tech, that it went on to become, strength coach of the year, an award that I'd won. How cool was it to see somebody that, that had come up through our program, that started with us, also as a junior, came in and did his internship. And he was a guy that I made do all the workouts with our team, because I told him if he was going to go back to his college and play his senior year, he better not let us down. And so he had to become an All-American, and that's exactly what he did. And he's doing incredible things in strength and conditioning. But I mean, I think the last time I counted, there's 29 former interns that are Division I head strength coaches now. And that's not counting all the other divisions or professional organizations. Derek Millender won an NBA championship ring with the Cavaliers. Was LeBron James' strength coach for a while. So like, some guys have gone on and do some really, really cool things. And what's cool for me is that I remember the first day when they had their eyes wide open going, how's this going to work? Or Derek Millender having to give his first presentation in the University of McKeefery and being so nervous that he didn't know if he could do it or not, and now he's owns multiple businesses and he's running one of the best NBA teams in the country, so pretty special to see the success that you guys all have had. And what's even cooler for me is that I get the benefit from all that, all those coaches that have gone through our program that go and develop additional ways of training and being able to provide that back to me. I'm the one that wins in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one of the coolest things about the high performance sport performance, whatever you want to call it, setting, is the interconnectedness of so many different scopes of the field. And now with the international nature of travel and competition, it's only getting bigger. And while it is a young profession, there are hundreds and tens of thousands of professionals out there. And in one way or another, we're connected to somebody who's currently working in Australasia or somebody who's working in Europe. And so, just like you said, having a mentor or a coach in your corner who can not only vouch for you, but just being able to, off cuff, have a conversation and say, have you ever considered doing XYZ over in Europe? And if the answer is yes, I have a connection who I can connect you with. And maybe that sets you up for a new trajectory that, again, that you didn't really anticipate before, but you find your niche there. I think it's super, super cool to hear those stories. It's super cool to hear about that. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to achieve with this My Momentum Connect mission, is that we want to be able to expose these internship programs out there that are outstanding, but maybe they're at a small Division III school in South Dakota. But the head strength coach there has an incredible network. They vouch for you. They develop you as a true coach of the game. And so that's really what we're trying to do, which is excellent. So obviously you kind of alluded to it here, and this is the final question. You alluded to the fact that these intern coaches that you had, like Dana, for example, they had these different aspirations, this trajectory they wanted to go on. They had their different personalities that they brought to the table along the way, some being nervous to give their presentations, others being potentially more confident or boisterous. So at your current role at Fresno State, with the staff that you have there and the intern coaches you've seen come through, what kind of personalities are you typically looking for in young coaches, and particularly those that you think will develop to be those leaders in the field as the generations pass?
Yeah, when I went to a small school, NAIA school in Kansas, and this was 25 years ago, whatever it's been. So it wasn't the same time as it is now in terms of being able to be connected and social media and even email. I remember having email be a separate column on my Excel spreadsheet if they happen to have one. But here I was very passionate. I wanted to go into this field. I wanted to make it. I wanted to be a success more than anything. Now, my body of work up to that point, I never had a strength coach. I didn't have the CSCS, I just had come out really. I didn't have a strength coach vouching for me or, these types of things. And I had coached football, but that was the only coaching. I only did that so that I could show that I'd done some coaching. But I had the hardest time getting somebody to take a chance on me. and that was, they either thought I wanted to be a football coach, which that was kind of a big thing back then. You're just trying to get in through strength and become a football coach. Or you just didn't know anything because the field wasn't, there wasn't any, I mean, the textbook was about the only book that was out, and on strength and conditioning. And so I just had the hardest time doing it. And all I kept saying was like, and I was young, I was young and married, and I just kept telling my wife over and over again, like, I just wish somebody would take a chance. Like, they would get so much value out of, I would freaking bleed for this person. And it ended up, Kansas City Royals ended up taking that chance, and the rest is history, right? But that's, to me, is the number one ingredient. You gotta have passion. If you have passion, I don't care what degree you have, I don't care what your experience has been, all those things are achievable, right? You can get, you can finish that degree, you can get that certification if you have the passion to go after this. Now with passion has to be understanding. This is not an overnight success journey. Anybody that's had success in this field, it is, if you listen to their stories, it's one of the reasons why I asked that question in my podcast, was because, I wanted people to hear that all these coaches that have had success had this incredible journey in front of, that they've had to overcome kind of to get to where they're at. And people often ask me, like, do they feel like people are taking advantage of interns, for, no pay or little pay or whatever it is. And that if you have passion and you have an understanding that the value that you get in that experience is going to be something that is going to carry on with you for the rest of your career, if you do it the right way and with the right connections and those types of things. If you have that understanding, then you won't feel like you're working a day in your life. You'll be doing exactly what you want to do at the level you want to do it at, or around the level that you want to do it at. And you would be learning skills that go well beyond, just strength and conditioning. I can't tell you how many coaches that have gone through our internship program that have gone out of the profession that say that they use the lessons that they learned in the internship to get up in there in whatever career that they ended up going into. So to me, I don't care. Like, I don't really, honestly, it's one of the first things I tell our internship coordinator, Izzy, is I don't care what their resume looks like. Talk to them on the phone. Let's find out if they're passionate about this field. And if they are, I typically give almost everybody a chance. Now, the difference between me and most people is once they get here, like, if they're not cutting it, then I'm quick to let them know that this isn't for them. But if you're putting in the effort, I always reward effort. I always reward effort. And then I'll match whatever their intensity is about their own personal career. I'll match with me fighting for them to go on in this career, and that's why we just, we ran our second internship at Fresno State. Now I've ran internships ever since day one, but this is my second semester of running an internship at Fresno State. And even in that group, we already had a person that became a head strength coach at a college. So it's pretty incredible that if you have the right skill set, and you have some experience coming in and things like that, then you can, the sky's the limit. But if you're that young strength coach that you're scared, like, I don't know about programming, I don't know how I'm going to be with a Division I, with a Division I athlete or those types of things, we want to be able to support that as well, and because passion can overcome a lot of inadequacies. And it's proven itself to me time and time again with coaches that I didn't know if they were going to be a success, that have gone on to be freaking incredible successes in this field. So that to me is the number one ingredient.
100%. I love what you said about passion and understanding there. It's almost like a symbiotic relationship in that the passion may come first before you have the understanding. And as we see as internship coordinators, and we often will have graduate students come out of or graduated students out of their undergraduate degree, they're on top of that Dunning-Kruger curve where, they think they know everything because the textbooks have been read and the exams have been passed, and they soon get booted off the top of that. And then it's the passion that really helps to pull them through and say, well, I understand now that I may not know everything. But as long as I make 1 millimeter of progress every day, then the passion is still there, because the knowledge develops over time. And just like you said earlier in this recording, we as internship coordinators and head strength coaches, we don't have to necessarily teach them everything. We just have to teach them strategies to be able to continue to learn and to continue to grow after they leave our kind of our four walls of the weight room or whatever. Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, I think one last thing I'll add to that is humility. I think you hit on it, touched on it right there, but this field will humble you very, very quickly. I mean, and that's the thing, like, once you do get in it, you got to have an understanding of what this profession, how it can be, because you're evaluated and hired by people that don't fully understand your job, and so for that, you can be fired for no reason whatsoever, and you have to have an understanding. So the same people you see going up are going to be the same people you see going down. And, you want to make sure that you learn to treat people the right way and understand that when you come in, you may have that book knowledge that you're talking about, but that doesn't mean anything unless you can get that freaking 18-year-old kid to do that program, and that's ultimately how you're evaluated. And I can't tell you how many coaches I've seen that have come in with all the book knowledge and been awful in that situation, and the reverse be true with people that don't have the book knowledge, but maybe were an athlete that understand the environment and have a ton of success.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very, very many different roads lead to Rome. That's for sure. Well, Coach Mac, I speak for hundreds when I say thank you very much for everything that you're doing to help push this profession forward, and the friendship and mentorship that you've given me, and helping me get my start with my first role here at Marquette. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate your time today. And if anyone has any more questions, obviously you'll be able to reach out to Coach Mac and Izzy Quintero at CSU Fresno, who's the internship coordinator there. So below this video on the page is obviously all the information about Fresno State's internship specifics. And you can look at the application material down at the bottom as well to get an idea of how you can get involved with an excellent semester under Coach Ron McKeefery and Izzy Quintero as well. All right. So thanks very much, Coach Mac. I appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch very soon.
Thanks, Stu. You're awesome, man. Appreciate you.